A very good morning to one and all present here. I'm Dr. Durga, Associate Professor, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Sri Lakshmi Narayana Institute of Medical Sciences. I'm here to talk about adenomyosis. Adenomyosis is defined by the presence of ectopic endometrial glands and stroma within the myometrium. The presence of ectopic endometrial glands and stroma induces a hypertrophic and hyperplastic reaction in the surrounding myometrial tissues. It usually occurs in 4th or 5th decade. It is associated with high parity, usually associated with other conditions such as myoma, endometrial polyps, and endometriosis. There are basically two different types of adenomyosis. One is a diffuse type, another one is called a local type. Adenomyoma describes a focus of adenomyosis within a leiomyoma. Both conditions are common, so it is not surprising that this is overlapping condition may occur. The most important presentation for adenomyosis is menorrhagia, congestive dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, and chronic pelvic pain. Now, what is menorrhagia? Menorrhagia is defined as heavy menstrual bleeding, which lasts for either more than or equal to 8 days or with an increased flow of greater than 80 ml. Here, the cycles are very regular. The only thing is that the patient will complain of increased bleeding per vagina in regular cycles. So another terminology which has been replacing is heavy menstrual bleeding. We call that as HMB. Now, another presentation is congestive dysmenorrhea. Congestive dysmenorrhea means painful menstruation, but the pain starts before the onset of menses. It starts about 2 days before the onset of menses, and it continues even during the menstruation. But the intensity of the pain subsides once the bleeding starts. So this is called congestive dysmenorrhea. Other disorders which characterize like with congestive dysmenorrhea are typical pelvic inflammatory diseases or a fibroid uterus. So this is one classical presentation. Another type of dysmenorrhea, what the patients with adenomyosis will encounter is that they have pain during the periods, not only during the periods, but before the periods and even after the periods. That is, the pain starts before the onset of menstruation, it continues during menstruation, and it persists even after the menstruation is over. So this is called congestive dysmenorrhea. Now next, what is called dyspareunia? Dyspareunia means painful sexual intercourse. This could be of two types, superficial dysmenorrhea and a deep dyspareunia. Superficial dyspareunia is usually seen in vaginitis infections and all, whereas a deep dyspareunia is usually associated with endometriosis and adenomyosis, even in pelvic inflammatory diseases. Chronic pelvic pain. The patient usually complains of a nagging pelvic pain, lower abdominal pain all the time, which is relieved sometimes with the analgesics, but later on persist. So this is called chronic pelvic pain. So these are the 4 basic presentations for adenomyosis. Adenomyosis, what we call is nothing but the deposition of the endometrial tissue within the myometrium. So this condition is otherwise called endometriosis interna. Adenomyosis and subfertility. It is thought to be a condition of a Paris woman with a final diagnosis made after hysterectomy. Thus, an association between adenomyosis and subfertility has not been fully established. So what is the link between adenomyosis and subfertility? There is not a clear link is present, but and on the other hand, the counterpart of adenomyosis called as endometriosis has a very good correlation with the subfertility. Subfertility means the inability or the difficulty for the couple to conceive. Okay, so that we call it as subfertility. It is now replacing the term called infertility. Now, sometimes adenomyosis patients also have been reported with complaints of subfertility, right? But even adenomyosis is also present in a Paris woman. A Paris woman is one who has already given birth to children. So that you call it as a Paris woman. So it's not a condition of nulliparous woman also. Some believe that adenomyosis is not common in subfertile women, while others think that adenomyosis plays a critical role in subfertility. So there is a two school way of thought is present. Either that is adenomyosis may be linked with subfertile or may not be linked with subfertile women. The hypothesis of a possible link between adenomyosis and infertility is becoming more and more plausible. There is observation that adenomyosis is present even in the younger women and can be associated with pelvic endometriosis and infertility. So most important thing is that now even this adenomyosis has been reported in younger generation. Before we thought adenomyosis is usually the disease of the Paris women, that is about the age group of 40 years or around the age group of 40 years. Nowadays, because of the changing lifestyle patterns, the adenomyosis has been reported in younger women also. And most commonly, this adenomyosis patients also have endometriosis. That is, these endometrial deposits are also seen in the pelvic regions, like in the ovaries or in the fallopian tubes or in the pouch of Douglas or in the rectum. So, and the existing two conditions of adenomyosis and pelvic endometriosis make the patient more prone to get into infertility. So what is a possible mechanism? So how does this adenomyosis is going to affect the uterine milieu? So it's an altered uterine peristaltic activity. Kizzer et al. At 2006 placed into the posterior vaginal fornix radio-labeled macroalbumin aggregates with a size of 5 to 20 micrometers, microns, okay, mimicking sperm size, and scanned with a gamma camera immediately after application and at various time intervals up to 30 minutes. Fertile women. Positive uni and ipsilateral transport of radionucleotides to the site bearing the dominant follicle. Diffuse adenomyosis and infertility, 70% remain in the uterus, 22% are transported to the contralateral site, 8% to the ipsilateral site of the dominant follicle. So what we want to say by this study is that there is a problem in the uterine peristaltic activity. So when a patient has adenomyosis, there is some changes taking place within the uterus, inhibiting the normal peristaltic activity, and therefore the sperms or so normally the sperms which enter the posterior vaginal fornix of this one are being tracked to the wrong direction, or to the ipsilateral side of where the dominant follicle has developed. No, that side the amount of activity of the movement of the sperm is diminished, whereas to the contralateral side it has been increased. So but the most of them they remain within the uterus. So this inhibition of the uterine ciliary motion, the columnar cell ciliary motion, plays an important role in infertility. This is what now the experts are telling us. Another important thing is the second one is the altered endometrial function and receptivity. Now, what I mean by this is that, see, whenever a ovum which is fertilized by a sperm, as it enters the uterus in the stage of morula or in the blastocyst stage, when it enters, it finds there has to be a good endometrium which is full rich of nutrients and a good blood supply, and with the correct portion of all the cytokines and all the other factors, it must be there for the endometrium to receive this fertilized egg. If any problem is present in the endometrium, the fertilized egg will fail to implant in it. And therefore, we talk about this receptivity of this endometrial function. For this, we see that many factors have been reported. So starting from this hypoxia inducible factor, interleukin 6, interleukin 10, all this you see, interleukin 8, matrix metalloproteinases, vascular endothelial growth factors, microvessel disease, leukemia inhibiting factor, interleukin 11, LIF receptor alpha, and all your others like catalases, cytochrome 250, everything are found to be increased. So this altered menu of endometrial cavity prevents a normal implantation. The sure diagnosis of adenomyosis is made on a pathological specimen. So how to diagnose? How can we confirm that this is a case of adenomyosis? It's only by the definitive diagnosis is always the histopathology. The pathological diagnosis is dependent on the visualization of the endometrial glands and stroma in more than one low power field from the endometrial basalis layer. So what we diagnose is that is in the pathological specimen, on a high power microscope, we find the endometrial gland situated in the myometrium. Now, how is the distance? What is the distance between the normal endometrial myometrial junction and to the site where the new endometrial cells are being deposited? That distance plays an important role. If it is more than 2.5 mm, as we say before, or more than one low power field, means that this patient has pathognomic endometriosis. No, adenomyosis. It is operator dependent. In a sense, the transvaginal ultrasound, which is done to find out the pathological, to find out the macroscopic appearance of this one. Meta-analysis is on the accuracy of sonography in the diagnosis of adenomyosis has shown to be a specificity, had a specificity of 82% and a specificity of 84%. But this is a variation, operator dependent variable. Variation may be present. So what do we find in ultrasound? In ultrasound, we find the uterus is enlarged and cystic and anechoic spaces or legs in the myometrium. Heterogeneous echo textures obscure the endometrial myometrial border and subendometrial halo thickening. So all these points are very important. So with this ultrasound only we can go. The first one is a uterine enlargement is there and cystic and echoic spaces or legs in the myometrium. So this cystic and echoic spaces are nothing but the blood-filled cavities which is present within the myometrium, which is nothing but caused because of the endometrium which is there and which is responding to the estrogen and the progesterone, and it's growing up and then it bleeds up during its withdrawal. Okay, so this heterogeneous echo texture is there because of this bleeders which is present, and the tissue will be present and bleeders. Okay, so then obscure the endometrium because of this anechoic cystic spaces and because of this bleeding which takes place within the cavity within the myometrium. So the endometrial myometrial junction border is not very clear and subendometrial halo thickening can be noted. So now I show you the picture of the this is a transvaginal ultrasound. So this is a probe, how the probe will be kept in, and you see a semi-half circle like this. Okay, next is you find this is a picture of the uterus over there, and this is a cervix which is present here, and you see here the endometrial thickening. So what is that? Is that here? Okay, now here what you see is a globular uterine enlargement with an obscure endometrial myometrial border. So this endometrial myometrial junction could be seen very clearly. So this is the endometrium, but you see the border here is not very clear. It is hazy. So this is a classical finding. Yes, this is a very good picture where you see here, this is a uterus which is present here, very good picture, and this is an endometrial cavity, and this is a cervix which is seen here, and you see an increased flow which is present over here. This anechoic cystic lacuna in the posterior uterine wall with the heterogeneous echo textures. Yes, here other variations is that this here the mass, it is an adenomyoma which is present over there. Linear striations are arrow in the presence of heterogeneous echo structure. So it can be show some striations may be present. So another good investigation which is done, and a more accurate investigation which is now preferred over than ultrasound, but it is a quite a costly one, right, is a magnetic resonance imaging. So the findings are the diffuse or the local whitening of the junctional zones on T2 weighted images are greater than 12 mm. Low intensity lesion, ill-defined, and the uterine enlargement can be seen, and small hypo-intense myometrial spots. What do you mean by the small hypo-intense myometrial spots? Are the cystic cavities, what we saw in ultrasound with anechoic spaces, right, which is nothing but because of the blood which is collected there. Next is this uterine enlargement. We know that's because of the adenomyosis. And there is, see, the widening of the junctional zone is very important. That junctional zone is nothing but the endometrial myometrial junctional zone, which is increased to greater than 12 millimeters. Yes, this is a good image in an MRI image, right, of sagittal T2 weighted MR image showing diffuse and even even thickening of the junctional zone arrows. So this is the junctional zone here, you see, which is irregular and a finding consistent with the diffuse endometriosis. So what you want to know here, this is a uterus which is presented, and this is a cervix. This is the endometrial cavity which is here, and you see this endometrium thickening, and this is a myometrium, and this endometrium lining is not very well defined. It is diffuse, and you see that thickening over there. Here, this part. So this is another picture, an MRI picture showing the focal thickening of the junctional zone. The junctional zone is nothing but the endometrial myometrial junctional zone. So what are other tests that can be done to confirm? So it is a CA-125 and a hysterosalpingography. Other tests that can confirm adenomyosis can be done in adenomyosis. The only definitive treatment for adenomyosis is hysterectomy with or without ovarian conservation. So this is the most important treatment, is only other than this one is majorly it is only hysterectomy. So before days hysterectomy was found to be the only cure for adenomyosis, because adenomyosis is an estrogen and progesterone dependent tumor, and it's a dependent one. So therefore the patients are very unlikely to respond to your hormonal treatment. So mostly we end up with only hysterectomies. What are the other alternative treatment available are the use of some medicines like GnRH analogs, levonorgestrel releasing intrauterine device, uterine artery embolizations, focused ultrasound for localized adenomyosis, endometrial ablation, and conservative surgeries. So GnRH analogs have been tried nowadays to reduce the symptoms of adenomyosis. That is, make the patient pain-free, and at the same time, you can make the patient pain-free and decrease in the amount of bleeding which is there. And another one is that this levonorgestrel releasing intrauterine device. This levonorgestrel releasing intrauterine device is nowadays being increasingly advised, and it has been used. The only thing is a little bit costly, about it cost around 2,500 to 3,000. And what we have to do is that this levonorgestrel, when placed within the uterus, it constantly releases this levonorgestrel, and this levonorgestrel acts upon these adenomyotic deposits and make them little bit pain-free, and the amount of bleeding also may decrease. Next is uterine artery embolization. Uterine artery embolization is a newer technique nowadays. Now, the main idea in uterine artery embolization is that we try to decrease the blood supply to the feeding uterus, and thereby causing necrosis, and thereby causing later on calcification of this adenomyosis. So all this may decrease the amount of bleeding which is present. Next is focused ultrasounds are present for localized adenomyosis, right? And then endometrial ablations and conservative surgeries. But these are alternatives to that. But the definitive treatment, usually it won't respond to all these drugs, and it ends up only with hysterectomies. But suppose if the patient is a young patient and they have adenomyosis and it has been localized to one area, means then we can go in for localized for one area, then we can go for conservative surgeries of removing only that adenomyoma. Data available in the treatment of infertility associated with adenomyosis are still fairly limited and mostly confined to case reports or uncontrolled small series. So what are the types of conservative surgeries which have been seen? So in conservative surgeries, we try to dissect the uterus and try to open, and then the opening of the endometrial uterine cavity, and then try to remove the adenomyoma. But this usually adenomyosis will occur very most commonly in the posterior wall rather than the anterior wall, and the posterior wall is much more enlarged and much more thickened when compared to the anterior wall. So in this type of surgeries are only allocated or only done only for your localized adenomyosis, but for diffuse adenomyosis, there is no treatment of conservative surgery. It may usually end up as only hysterectomies. So here you see the excision of the inner side of the lesion, excision of the outer side of the lesion. Here suturing of the lesion and rejoining of the uterus. After you remove this one, then you have to rejoin the uterus with intraocular sutures. So after the survey, the mean visual analog scale score of dysmenorrhea decreased from 9.4 to 0.8, and anemia due to menorrhagia improved in all women. 2 patients became pregnant with 1 interstitial pregnancy and 1 normal pregnancy that is continuing. No major complications or sequelae observed. This procedure should be considered as therapeutic option in women with the symptoms of diffuse uterine adenomyosis and who wish to avoid hysterectomy. So this is a conservative procedure which has been advocated. Another is the triple flap methods. This is an OSADA methods where try to remove the adenomyoma and then they try to suture on the uterus in a T-shaped fashion. So this is another method which has been advocated. Okay, now we go on to the GnRH analogs. Silva et al. In 1994 published a first term pregnancy in a patient with a 10-year history of secondary infertility after 5 months of therapy with GnRH. So gonadotropin analogs. IUD containing danazol, a Japanese group have published results of 14 women with symptomatic adenomyosis that had relapsed after previous medical therapy. There was a good relief of the symptom, and 3 of the 4 infertile women conceived after removal. So this has nowadays a promising, this is an intrauterine device. It's not containing danazol. Uterine artery embolization. There are few case series have been reported for the treatment of adenomyosis, and then the final one is an MRI assisted high intensity focused ultrasound. So this focused ultrasound has been targeted upon the target tissues, and the increasing dosage of the tissues will cause eventual necrosis of the adenomyoma. So this is MRI assisted intensity focused ultrasound. So far we learned adenomyosis is quite a difficult condition to treat. It's a difficult condition to treat, and that too adenomyosis nowadays it's occurring in a young age, and the main reason for this is their lifestyle habits. They are increasingly exposed to estrogen at low age itself because of the broiler chickens which are being used, which have been steroid injected and make them more estrogenic, and consuming these chickens from the early childhood of days itself will lead the patient to get into early puberty, and later on exposing the women to this high doses of estrogen for a long period. Say from the age of 11 years, it's been exposed to this one. So this itself is an important factor and it has to be addressed. So changing the lifestyle pattern is very important for adenomyosis. So hence adenomyosis occurring in a young age women, we try, because who are not yet conceived and who have to get married and and to have a child, and problems have to be addressed to them, and depending upon the problem the treatment has to be started at the earliest. But for if any case, if the parity of the woman is finished, and like she's not having any idea of continuing the pregnancy or having another child, it is better advocated to go for hysterectomy. Now, how you do this hysterectomy step? This hysterectomy can be done by two methods, either by an open method, or you can go for a total laparoscopic hysterectomies. Sometimes adenomyosis can also be taken in for lap-assisted vaginal hysterectomies. So what they do that in hysterectomy. Hysterectomy is this. Now what we do is a total abdominal hysterectomy or a vaginal hysterectomy. We do a TAH, right? So in TAH, what we are going to do for uterus removal. So we make a skin incision, a suprapubic transverse incision is made, starting about 2 centimeters above the suprapubic region, about 10 centimeters, and then directly we go through the layers of the skin, subcutaneous tissue, the rectus sheath which is coming there, and then we open up and the genital peritoneum, and now we enter the peritoneal cavity. There we have to first check for the size and site of the and site of the adenomyosis which is present there, and also we have to look for any other associated endometriotic deposits which are present. So usually they'll go hand in hand. Next is, then after identifying the pathology, if we have decided to remove the uterus and cervix, we have to put clamps such a way that we retain the ovaries and the fallopian tube. So what structures we clamp for the hysterectomy is, the first structure is always the round ligament, the fallopian tube, and the ovarian ligament. The 3 structures we clamp first, and then we try to release this UV fold of peritoneum and then try to push the bladder downwards. Afterwards, if we have to retain the ovaries for this case, means we have to cut the fallopian tubes. We have to clamp, cut, and ligate the fallopian tubes, ovarian ligament, as well as the round ligament. Okay, but we have to, if for any reason we have to remove the ovaries, means then we have to release the ovaries from the point where it is being attached, like from the pelvic side wall to the mesoovarium, it has to be released. And then later on, as we go down the hysterectomy step, we try to clamp, cut, and ligate the broad ligament, and we separate it, and then we identify the uterine vessels and try to clamp, cut, and ligate. And after that, we go back downwards and put the clamp, cutting, and ligate, clamp it, and you cut it and ligate the 2 important thing. One is your McEnroth's ligament, and another one is your cervical McEnroth's ligament, and your cardinal, that's always called cardinal ligament, and then is your uterosacral ligament. So after cutting all the structures of the supports of the uterus, we can go, we proceed further and try to remove the uterus and cervix with hole, and then close the vaginal vault with the vicryl. Okay, so this is closure of the vault. So this is a step of hysterectomy. And so to sum up, some cardinal points which I would like to tell you are, the first thing is, adenomyosis is a disease of the paraswoman, though it can occur in young age. And adenomyosis, the main clinical features are, it has menorrhagia and congestive dysmenorrhea leading into triple dysmenorrhea. Also, dyspareunia is also present. Okay, and the main investigation, how to confirm is always by histopathological examination. And nowadays, MRI is now at the MRI is done for most of the cases, right? And an ultrasound also, we can detect certain important points, right? After doing that, the treatment is always hysterectomy. And if the patient is not willing for hysterectomy and wants to retain the uterus, and we have other medicinal drugs like your GnRH analogs, your intrauterine device may be present, which cures the complaints. So I hope it is clear so far. Yeah, thank you.